the number one thing that I would do if I was a small brand or small to medium brand is I would speak to my customers. I like to say you're one frequently asked question away from losing a sale. You just need to make sure that you find out what those frequently asked questions are.
Welcome to the Customer Commerce Podcast, where technology's fast and biz is a blast.
In life and in business, time is precious. It's why customers stay or leave and why businesses succeed or fail. We're here to give a voice to everything that makes business, whether as a customer or as a CEO, easier and more rewarding. Welcome to the Customer Commerce Podcast. Let's dive in. Welcome, ladies and gents, to the Customer Commerce Podcast. We are pumped to introduce our guest, Saul Kropman, the founder of Alchemy Consultants. Saul helps e-commerce brands turn financial confusion into profitable growth, often in just 90 days, through his proven GROW framework, GRO. He's also known for his incredible, insightful LinkedIn videos, which is what caught my attention, where he critiques and improves e-commerce websites, always with an eye on conversion and customer experience. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I love the videos, the 5 Fix Friday. It's short, it's sweet. I've watched several of them. In fact, you did one recently on CPAP machines. We have a client that does CPAP machines. And as you were going through your fixes, I went, yep. Like, because it's true. What prompted you to get into that? Like, how did you come up with that as a concept?
I'd sort of read somewhere that video was becoming big on LinkedIn, and it's almost, let's call it the TikTokification of LinkedIn. Someone that I follow did a video on, I think it was one of the Mosaic brands, with their SEO and how it kind of broke down. And I thought, oh, that's fun, that's interesting. And it's Friday, it's 5, it's an easy alliteration. So 5 Fix Friday was born, and I think I've been doing that since January now. So it's been about 5 months every week. I took some time off public holidays, but I've been pretty consistent with it. And it's generally just a great exercise for me to talk about what I do best, as well as kind of have some fun learning how to get better at video editing. And just overall, it's a good way to potentially get clients and things like that. And video does definitely go far on LinkedIn. It's got a good reach.
Yeah, but I find that the way you present it is very no bullshit, and it's very fast. It's not like wafty, I'm going to show you how to do this. And did you know, blah, blah, blah. It's just like, this is what I would change. This doesn't make it easy. This is ridiculous. This doesn't need to be here. Not in a way that you're criticizing the brand, but just like, I think I'm reading a book at the moment that's like, now we're at a stage where as an audience and consumers, we're so over the wafting of stuff, of things being communicated. Just get to the point. And when it's truthful, it's not the intention is not harmful. So the truth kind of hinges. You just get it, and it's just helpful.
I mean, that wafting stuff pisses me off. I Googled that there's a city in South Africa. It used to be called Port Elizabeth. It's just changed its name, and I was trying to figure out how to spell it and pronounce it. So I Googled how to pronounce this new name, and it's got the click in it and everything. And the YouTube video that came on was 10 minutes long. And they got to the pronunciation 8 minutes in, right? It's like, come on.
We've all read a recipe that talks about how, someone's grandmother used to teach them how to make this product or make this recipe in summers at special times together. And then you've gone through 6 pages of descriptions about the recipe. You've seen 3,000 ads, and then you finally get to the bottom, and it's, something that you probably wouldn't make anyway. So it's a very unpleasant experience. And it's funny, Michael, you mentioned that CPAP video that I did. The biggest problem I had with that is that there was just so much corporate jargon and waffling on those pages. As a customer, and I'm sure we'll get into this in a moment, like, customers just want to get the information as quickly and as basic as possible. And that's not to say that they are basic customers. They don't have to work to get the information.
Yeah, why waste the customer's time? There's a truism that everything, well, I don't know if it's a truism, that's a strong statement, but there is
it's a Michaelism.
Idea or philosophy that a Michaelism that anything that puts the customer on weight is an enemy to the business. Not giving a price when you can just show from blah, even if it's going to be slightly out of date. all of that puts the customer on weight, and you really want to make it as easy as possible to get a customer to pay. Take all of the barriers out of the way. Just be human. Treat them with the same time you would.
My whole thesis is essentially based on simplicity and trust. Is how do you make their lives easier and how do you make them trust you more?
Yeah, exactly. So you mentioned it helps you get some sales. Well, what is it you do? Like, we may as well tell the audience that, just in case.
Essentially, I'm an e-commerce consultant that has a lot of kind of general approach to a variety of, whether it's acquisition, customer experience, and retention as well. So kind of through the funnel experience. But my whole speciality is that I can go onto Meta or Google Ads or whatever, and I can put an ad up and I can get you enough clients to make some money. That's not necessarily profitable in e-commerce. So we have this hangover of COVID where the only option was to buy online, and people got, I don't want to say lazy, but people got comfortable, especially e-commerce teams. And now we're actually having to work really, really hard to make a profit. And that's kind of what my specialty is. I work with brands to allow them to focus on the top performing products and making sure that those products are always in stock, always selling well. And, at the end of the day, the bottom line is the bottom line.
Yeah, because it's interesting that every company has this. You've got the products that don't make you money and the products that make you money, right?
Correct.
Where do you see the biggest gap there? Like, are there a lot of own goals that commerce companies do that make a otherwise profitable product unprofitable? Or do you help on that side? Or is it more that, well, this product just has, 50% product margin, so we can afford to make mistakes on it, so we'll sell the crap out of that one? Or do you help them tweak, well, if you did this a bit differently, you'd save $3 per order or whatever?
A mixture of both. So, I'll give you a perfect example. The thing that I see so many brands doing, and this is from $50,000 a month brands up to $50 million a month brands. Like, we're talking huge brands here. They go and they put Google PMax campaigns up, and it's all got this branded search. So I did some work with one of your previous guests, Anna, where one of her clients, it looked like things were going really, really well. But then you delve deep into their Google PMax campaigns.
Sorry, Google PMax for our audience. What's that?
That's an important part of it. So Google Ads, what they've done is they've essentially put a black box around their advertising, and they have these things called PMax campaigns, where you go in, you'll put 25 headlines, you'll put all the different images, you'll put all the different videos, and what it'll do is it'll actually go and combine the different headlines and make sure that you get the best information, also the top selling products. But what it does is it pulls in most of the time, what it does is it pulls in your brand name. So, for example, if you were advertising the Commerce Podcast, you'd want to exclude that. It's a very common thing. So It doesn't then spend the budget on all the other search terms that it should be doing. And what happens is it looks like you're doing really well and looks like your agency is making you a lot of money. But at the end of the day, people were coming to search for your brand name anyway. So essentially what happens is they go on Google and there's an ad and then your actual organic listing just below.
Right.
And again, we said people like it simple. They click on the organic listing, click on the sponsored listing rather than the organic listing, and you've paid for a click that you're already going to get.
Nice.
Yes.
That's great.
Such a common one.
Great business opportunity there, Google. Well done. And that's why you see so many sponsored ads for brand names, I guess, on search terms. So yeah, that's critical.
Yeah. So stuff like that is kind of my bread and butter, but then also just working with merchants and saying, okay, these products give you, say, for example, 70% margin. These products give you 30% margin. Why are we spending so much time focusing on the 30%? Let's focus on the 70% and potentially work through retention models, which is, email and SMS, which is not free, but very low cost in comparison. Let's put the lower revenue items through retention and get the people to come back and spend money that way.
Interesting. So now in today's day and age with businesses, obviously we're changing so much, almost month by month. Where do you view e-commerce right now in regards to the challenges for small businesses? What are you finding with your clients?
The thing that I find is the hardest for most people is they just don't have the capacity. So even in larger businesses, there's maybe a team of 3 or 4 people who are running the e-commerce department. The smaller the company, obviously, the smaller it gets. And there's just too many hats to wear. That is what I find is a problem for a lot of people. AI is making life a lot easier. And I tell everyone to embrace AI, not as a way to replace people, but as a way to enhance teams. If you look at a marketing team creating creative for, say, for example, Meta ads, you can cut that production time in half with the same amount of people using AI and different AI tools. I think at the end of the day, acquisition of customers is not getting cheaper, and you kind of have to be really good with your advertising. I think that's an important part that people don't realize, and it's also there's a psychology behind that as well. Like, it's not just about putting things on sale; it's about acquiring customers who are interested in your products, and understanding what problems you solve for your customers. I think, if I have to be honest, that's probably my number one point, is that most people aren't solving their clients' problems or their customers' problems.
You mentioned all the hats that customers or clients or people who are selling, business owners, are wearing. One of the big things we've tried to do, within Store Connect, which obviously sponsors this podcast, is trying to reduce the number of systems that people need to work in, right? Where do you see most of the time being wasted by, well, wasted's the wrong word, spent, I guess, by these companies? Because I definitely have had the feedback that a lot of people are paying a lot of people to get computers to talk to computers a lot. That's been a very common thread. Are you finding that, or are you finding it just that there's just so much more expected on a per product basis and all the information? And what are some insights you have there on where people are spending their money where they don't have to? Spending their time where they don't have to.
Spending their time. It's time and money. I think there's so many vendors out there who sell a dream that is not necessarily realistic. I think you've hit the nail on the head. If a vendor can sell savings of time, it's even probably more valuable than a saving of money. But I think, at the end of the day, the competition and the amount of content that you have to put out there, whether it's organic content for, a podcast, this is your weekly commitment. It's a lot of effort. You've got to do things like your emails, marketing. Let's say you're sending 2 to 3 emails a week. That's you've got to have it designed. You've got to have the copywriting and stuff like that. Those things are just quite simply time consuming for brands. And those things, I say, just lean into AI, not in the sense that it becomes this generic drivel, but use it to enhance your current skills. And I just say always just put your information into AI and tell it to spit out something that's similar to what you would have previously made. I do that pretty much every morning on LinkedIn. I write a post. It knows my style, it knows my tone, and then I ask it to edit it and format it, and it comes out the way I want it in the end. But it's all based on me rather than based on the kind of generic part of AI.
Yeah, it's a big danger.
In the end, it's just communication. And I think the businesses that are truthful and genuinely want to help, they're just communicating. So the communication is going to reach, whether it's through AI or yourself. Anyway, AI obviously makes it much easier. I want to know where... you're very passionate in talking about where the customer fits into all of this. It's not just about conversions and the sale and let's, where do you think, in terms of the opportunities now, where do you think they lie with the customers? Does that make sense?
It does.
General...
It does.
What's my actual question? I guess from comparing now of what it used to be like and what it is now, I feel like it used to be easier to get customers. Would we agree on that? Because you would put a sale there and people would want to buy it. But I think we've kind of got a bullshit-ometer.
Bullshit meter, yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes,
Yeah, exactly. Where we know if we don't want to be sold things, which, like you said, it makes it harder. And there's more things that we have to use in order to kind of sell something without it coming across as we are a business and obviously we have to sell something. So how do you feel, rather than all the problems with gaining a customer now, what are the opportunities out there that you find that actually can benefit customers, and how businesses can reach out in a way that can do that?
What a lot of businesses have forgotten is that ultimately, it doesn't matter what your conversion rate is, because it matters about what problems you're solving for the customer. The customer is ultimately what pays your bills, what pays for your salary, and you've got to keep them as your North Star metric. People, my favorite adage of this is like, if I go to the shops to get a drill bit because my wife asked me to put a set of shelves up, I go buy the drill bit, but I'm not actually buying a drill bit. I'm buying essentially my wife's respect, because she's going to be proud of me and find it very attractive that I've gone and I've put something up on the wall. And that's what the thing is with brands. The smart brands need to do is, it's not about selling you the drill bit. I can sell you any drill bit. I can sell it to you on discount. That's not really the solution. It's the real kind of motivation behind why someone is buying the drill bit, what they're getting out of it. And I think it's quite hard for brands to understand that, because at the end of the day, that is let's call it the buying psychology, rather than just purely what's the offer going to be, what's the discount going to be, what type of ad are we doing. It's really trying to understand, is this a problem that the customer knows about? Is this something that they know the brand that we're looking at? You've got to have those different layers of knowledge about the product. And you've got to just kind of adjust your whole marketing mindset to being about solving problems and just understanding where the customer is in their buying journey.
That's a really interesting point you made there, Saul, on the, being able to advertise the product based on the use and not necessarily the means. Like, you could put a drill bit up, like a Phillips head or a masonry bit or a Phillips head screwdriver drill bit, and pay $15 per click because the market's so competitive. Or you could work out a way that 20% of our shoppers are actually building something from IKEA for their wife who just bought it, like I did last night, and they need the IKEA branded, assembly kit, which includes the drill bit. And that's a really long tail search. So you're not going to be paying much per click. And that could be a great way to drive up both profit, but also value for that customer, because then they're able to just find it. They're not having to go, well, will this work with what I'm thinking?
IKEA actually does something really great with this. Is they've got amazing upsells and cross sells on their site. So they'll often offer you, the drill bit and the actual pieces that you need to put it all together. And that's something else that I do with clients, is I help them come up with those strategies of how best to place those upsells and where best to place those upsells.
Yeah, upsells are really, we're seeing a lot of those questions coming to us in the other half of my business, or the non-podcast side of my business. A lot of clients asking, well, can we use AI to propose, the cross sells and upsells? Do you see that getting a lot of adoption right now? What are I've been finding that the solutions are fairly expensive, but how are you finding that?
Yeah, look, there's a bit of that buzzword situation at the moment with AI. I think it's the joke is that if you add AI onto your product, it's suddenly valued at, and you add an extra zero onto the valuation. So it's a little bit of a venture capital kind of a joke at the moment. But at the end of the day, definitely. We were doing cross sells before we were doing AI, and I think at the end of the day, it's the McDonald's chips and Coke model. Do you want fries with that? That's where this is at. And at the end of the day, I always, my perfect example is just sell another of whatever you sold at 25% off. That's the easiest upsell you can possibly do. And that works like a charm.
Yeah, it's really interesting because you've already got that customer. So the acquisition cost, you can basically say is zero. So therefore, you're still making the same money because you're not having to pay for that acquisition.
Not only are you not paying for the acquisition, your pick and pack fees are probably not that much extra. You paid for the shipping already. So it's free margin, basically.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That wouldn't be very hard for a lot of people to implement. That's one of those great low code. Actually, one of the things I admire about your 5 Fix Fridays is your preference towards low code or no code. Some of the things you promote or say about might be code on their platform, but in many, many cases, they're very simple fixes, like their information hierarchy or getting rid of complex verbiage. And I think that's really valuable in today's world. Requiring them to go out and get a developer is hard.
When you're talking about code, you mean like actual coding? Because I think a lot of businesses don't realize that coding is a thing and it happens at the back end.
The whole idea of the 5 Fix Friday low or no code, and thank you for noticing my tagline, I appreciate that, is essentially that, I've been in e-commerce management or e-commerce trade teams for a long time, and a lot of those people aren't necessarily technical. They're marketers, or when their technical skills are extended to maybe installing apps on Shopify or Magento, depending on which platform they're on. And essentially what the idea is, they can go into the back end of whatever platform they're on, and they can go and make those changes. They're often common sense flows rather than necessarily we have to change massive amounts of code. I think that's a dangerous place to be because it's expensive. You've got to get a developer to actually go and implement it. There's potentials for these things not to work as well. So I think it's a very low risk type of way of doing it. And I think because I come with a fresh set of eyes, I'm not actually necessarily going in and telling you something that's going to radically change the business.
I think that's really important because, these business owners in many cases are already overwhelmed. Telling them now you got to go replace the website and modify your whole sign up process and blah, 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 blah. Well, I mean, okay. But if we can get them 5 fixes that could be implemented on Tuesday, and that increases their revenue 5% or 10%, then maybe that's a bit extra money they can invest in improving their platform or moving to another system that's more flexible into the future. I think this is really, really important and very powerful.
I'd like to know the tea. Just before we wrap up, I'd like to, if you're keen, Saul, on giving us some examples that you've seen of, I guess, e-commerce site or a business in general that you've seen that have been kind of unaware of the customer problems. Like they've just, I don't even know what you want to call it. Just
they're selling their product, not the solution. You mean is that what you mean, Jeff?
Yeah, exactly. And what kind of consequences you see on their website? Do you have an example of that?
Unfortunately, a lot of fashion brands, they seem to fall into this situation. They put the bare minimum and they kind of expect customers to know where to almost hunt to find the solutions to their problems. So my number one thing that I see with fashion brands is that they don't mention shipping and they don't mention returns. Now, returns is obviously the most important thing when it comes to fashion because you can't try it on and you don't know if it's going to fit. So what happens is you'll go to a product page and it'll have pictures of the model wearing the products. And then you'll sort of hunt around to find, if you're lucky, you'll find shipping details. But then there's often no mention of the returns. And that just completely erodes customer trust. So I think that's probably my biggest thing that I see quite commonly. I think that's unfortunately a lot of the kind of small to medium fashion labels fall into that situation. They can't seem to keep up with the requirements of that. So that would be my biggest concern. The other thing that I do notice on those sites is that they don't really talk about the descriptions of the products are very like, okay, this is made of partially cotton, this is made partially of viscose or whatever kind of weird material that they have. Another site that I audited, for example, they use recycled plastic in some of their products, which is cool for certain brands, but they never mention that at all. They never really mention kind of what the benefits of their products are. They just very much rely on, let's say, for example, an influencer wearing their products and hoping that gets them over the line.
So not focusing on what's making them unique. I think that's probably one of the biggest. We have David Breyer on the podcast a lot. He's a branding guru. And he came up with a great definition of branding, which is the art of differentiation, right? So 4 words.
He's right.
And having a unique aspect to what it is you're doing and leaning into that really builds that customer loyalty, because you could buy a Phillips head screwdriver from anyone, but if the brand that you're talking to helps husbands repair relationships with their wives, it's just a different world, right? So yeah, that's really cool. I just wanted to say, Saul, I think aside from everything, I definitely want to connect up with you after this. There's probably quite some work across many of our clients that you might be able to help them with. And,
amazing.
Store Connect's been a really interesting journey for me. I've been building it now for 9 years, and we've built the tooling, and now we're getting a lot of clients that are trying to, like, our ideal client is the client that's trying to scale. So they've built their existing systems and they're getting to the point where the system, the cost and time cost, specifically the time cost of running the system, is exceeding the rate that they can expand. As you start bolting on these other systems, the integration cost and keeping it all running just keeps going up and up and up.
Yeah.
And you get to a point where you hit a ceiling on that and you just can't expand because the systems are holding you back. And that's the problem Store Connect tries and solves. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that the clients we get are always looking to, okay, now we have this, because Store Connect's a massive bag of Lego. How do we build the spaceship, right? How do we actually start tweaking this? And where are the low-hanging fruit opportunities that we can do on this site? And I think it would be a really interesting interesting to work with you on that. So I'll definitely connect up with you. But I think this has been really, really interesting. I guess last thing, if you had a small to medium business holder or someone who's trying to scale their e-commerce business in front of you right now, what's one thing they could do Friday afternoon that is going to most likely generate the most number of, increased revenue or increased profit? What's the number one thing that people aren't doing right that they should probably fix?
The number one thing that I would do if I was a small brand or small to medium brand is I would speak to my customers. And it's a surprisingly underrated little hack here in that I would, first of all, put a post-purchase survey on my site. Ask questions like, what problem are we solving here for you? And also, what almost stopped you from buying? Because you'll often find the little nuggets of, I couldn't find, like I mentioned earlier, I couldn't find the shipping information. I couldn't find the returns information. And that way you can highlight it. So, you're almost, I like to say, you're one frequently asked question away from losing a sale. You just need to make sure that you find out what those frequently asked questions are. I would also...
Awesome.
It's such a simple hack because at the end of the day...
I love that question though. What almost stopped you from completing the purchase? Because everyone has that. 100%. Every customer that buys something almost didn't at some point in that journey. That's a great question.
Yeah, it's such a simple one. And then what I would also do is in your email platform, I'd segment my, say, top 10% customers or maybe top 5%, your VIP customers who spent the most money with you, and just ask them what other problems they might be having that your products can solve, or just kind of like what issues are they dealing with? Because at the end of the day, that might give you a gold mine of information of what you can put on your site. Also gives you a gold mine of what products to create. So, at the end of the day, they pay the bills, get their information, serve them, and you will be very comfortable for the rest of your life.
So those two great pieces of advice. I love that first question. And then the second one on the VIP customers, getting ideas about other products. That's genius. And I love that both of those tips don't require any technical knowledge or code. Both of them are just, you can do it. You can just get people on the phone. I love talking to my customers on the phone. I talk about this all the time, and it's all about the Customer Commerce podcast, obviously. So it's right up our alley.
Saul, thank you so much for joining us. Look, I'm going to put your LinkedIn details, your website in the show notes so that people can find you. And also, I highly recommend to check out Saul's Friday tips.
5 Fix Friday.
Fridays, definitely. And I'm sure you're going to be doing more other videos as well. Thank you again for joining us. Just little bottles of wisdom. I love it. And yes, listeners, we'll see you next week. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope you had an awesome time leaving you with ideas on how to improve your business and wow customers. If you'd like to leave a real customer's story, head to the link in our show notes and cuss away. Love the show? Please subscribe and leave a review because that enables us to help more businesses in building real relationships with customers and grow more rapidly. See you next time.